No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. On this Thoughtful Thursday, I want to play a short little clip that I found online from Gary Vaynerchuk. I know you and I are both fans of Gary V. It's about maybe 20 or 30 seconds long, and then I want to get your thoughts about it because it's a little clickbaity, but I like it, and I seem to kind of gravitate towards his mindset on this kind of thing. But there's a potential other side of it too. So let's listen to that, and we'll come right back.
I'm a big believer in hiring fast. I think people overthink it. It's a guessing game. I don't think I've ever checked a reference check. It's not practical. Of course you're gonna put the 3 people that either most believe in you or love you, and or you prepped them to be like, hey, get my back. I think you're making a logical guess to the best of your ability based on what you know about your organization and the series of questions you asked. I'm a big fan of hiring fast, meaning I don't think you should just hire everyone, but if you feel it, you don't need to go through too many more rounds. It all depends on how much you trust your intuition and pattern recognition. I think once you have someone in your organization, you now know the truth. Hiring is guessing. Firing is knowing. To me, it's hire fast, fire faster. That doesn't mean like be mean and fire. It means put in the work quickly if you can recognize something's not working, and if it doesn't work after 6 months to a year, like you gotta go.
All right, what do you think about that? Hire fast, no reference checks?
I mean, I'm a fan of just the intuition from a hiring standpoint. We've talked about this before. I know we've talked about just hiring and the length of time it takes for somebody to kind of make a decision on somebody, that would come to an organization. Because I think that there is definitely kind of like a vibe, a feel, if you're in an industry, especially like in a customer service industry, how somebody presents themselves, how they the energy they give, the confidence they exude. These are all things that you can pick up relatively quick, and I just like that idea because I think sometimes we do overcomplicate hiring processes with so many interviews and questions that we just teach people how to be better at answering questions instead of just like assessing whether or not somebody can join the company and knowing the fact that we're taking a risk no matter what.
Right. No, I agree with that. Unless you're promoting somebody from within, there's a certain amount that there really is no way to know until you actually see somebody in the job. The idea of hiring fast and using your gut, I like that. There are some other parts of it too, which is you have to de-risk it a little bit. You can't just kind of throw anybody in there who you want to just because you happen to like the cut of their jib. They have to have a process to this that is more rigid, that makes sure that you are you're at least slowing it down a little bit and putting some objectivity to it. But at the end of the day, you're right. It can't be something that takes weeks or months, a decision that should take, 1 or 2 interactions with somebody to kind of figure out. And obviously, the more you move up in an organization, the higher the position is, the more gravity there is to those decisions. But in terms of just letting somebody into an organization, yeah, there's a real benefit to hiring fast. And also by de-risking that by hiring fast, meaning if you hire fast, you haven't put the rigor into this process that now is going to be looked at as like, wow, with all these 17 interviews you made this person go through and they still didn't work out, your process must be terrible. If you hire fast and you don't put a lot of time or investment into the process, then if it doesn't work out and you can help a person exit gracefully and go on to their next thing, again, that would be fire fast too, then I think you are better equipped to kind of go through this process over and over and over again. Your muscles are kind of exercised on this, as opposed to only going through it 2 or 3 times a year because you've slowed it down so much that you really don't know how to do this without the work of 17 people involved.
Yeah, and I think there's also like ways to make it happen faster. Like I'm a big proponent of like finding your best people and saying, hey, who do you recommend?
Sure.
Who do you know that maybe you've worked with in the past or that you feel would be a good fit here? Like things like that, because it also then helps to bring on people and they kind of have a cosign when they come in. And you're not just necessarily like meeting strangers that don't have any type of relationships with people that already work in your organization. But I agree. Like I think that especially if you're a hiring leader, I would imagine that you've got enough experience and tenure, and you kind of know, the questions that you want to ask, the things that you kind of want to filter for. And to your point, it can feel like all of these interviews and conversations are an investment in selecting the right people, but then I also think is that really necessary? And is it only a few people, especially like those that work directly, like if you're going to work for somebody directly, they should have input in that because they're part of making this decision, and they're only going to get better over time of making hiring decisions and building the intuition they need by making calls and then seeing how it works out. And I think that's helpful in realizing, like, okay, this is maybe where I thought somebody would work out because I maybe heard something similar or similar background or similar experiences or that type of thing. Maybe I'll ask a couple more questions to see if there's a different, way this can go. And I think that's really, really important to be able to build skill in talent selection with leaders.
Yeah, the second part I want to talk about here is where he talks about firing faster. And now he mitigates it and says, he doesn't mean, kick somebody out on the curb, but the idea of firing faster in his words is along the lines of, don't string somebody along hoping they're going to eventually be able to have skills that are needed when it's clear they don't have the skills or they can't get there very, very quickly. I know a lot of organizations where this doesn't happen very quickly, and it causes a lot of fallout and a lot of damage is done by people, especially in leadership roles, who don't have the skills to be there, and they're there hoping they're going to, kind of magically get there. And so I want to ask you a question about when this has happened to you, but first I want to give it a word for one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, have you ever been in a situation where someone reported to you and you almost felt like a personal responsibility to get them up to speed or where they needed to be, even though everything that you were seeing was telling you this is the wrong person for it, but you kind of felt almost pot committed and bought into them, and so you kind of made it go longer than it probably needed to go?
Definitely. I think there's that's a part of human nature of kind of like, if you felt that you've made the right call, maybe there's something that's not connecting here. Maybe there's something that's going on where, like, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt and things like that. And I've been in those situations, and I think that over time, what you realize is once somebody, and especially a leader, has had enough time to kind of like immerse themselves in what's going on, get to know the team, see what's happening, find the way to add value, and have enough time to do all of that. If you're not seeing that happen, or if you're not seeing the behaviors that you kind of assessed for, I think it's critical that you have that conversation and say something like, hey, it's been 90 days now. I want to talk about how it's going. What are you seeing? What are some things, and this is the kind of types of question that I ask, what are some things that you've done that you're really proud of, or things that you've kind of caught on to? What do you see as the hurdles that are maybe slowing you down from showing up to the best of your ability? And then what are some mistakes that maybe you've made that, looking back on it, you would have made a different decision? And I'm asking these very specific questions because I'm also trying to understand and assess, like, do they have self-awareness? Are they tracking the same? If somebody says to me, I don't really think I've made any mistakes. I think I've done a lot. Okay. Would you like for me to share with you some of the ones that I've recognized and observed, right? Like, we're going to have this conversation, but I think it's really fair in that moment to say, like, these are things that if we look at the job description, if we look at what's expected here, these things have to move very quickly. Right? Like we can't have somebody in a role where they're learning how to do the basics of the job.
Sure.
You kind of have to be able to do the basics of the job. And then there's like the extra things and the ability to have bandwidth to take on larger projects, to do more types of things. But let's focus on this, and to say things as a leader, to say, like, I believe in what I've seen, that you have the potential to move faster here, or to be able to accomplish these things, but I am a little bit concerned that it's taking a little bit too long. So I want to talk about that. Like, what do you think is slowing it down? What are they like really having the conversation, having the dialogue, of course, building some confidence there, but being really clear about it to say, okay, like, so what's the next 30 days going to look like? What's the next 60 days going to look like? What are some things that you're working on now that we're going to follow back up on to validate and verify that you can kind of put these behaviors into action, and we can see something a little bit different. And it's maintaining that dialogue and having those conversations to get to the point where you may have to say to somebody, like, it's clear to me that this isn't working out how we thought it would. Is it clear to you? Where do we go from here? What do you think? And just being comfortable having that dialogue so that it can be about the leader understanding that this is not personal, and that
Right.
just because they may be struggling doesn't make them a bad person, but also we're going to have accountability conversations and we're going to talk about it, and we have to be real and we have to be honest with one another. And I think that is the due diligence that a leader has to have, but you have to commit to the time and effort to be in positions to notice, to observe the behaviors, to take your notes, and to be really specific about what you're going to deliver to them, because it's unfair if you just have the opinions of others or what you've heard or the team says. Like, if you're doing that, then you are delegating that responsibility as a leader, and that is not, doing the right thing or building the right culture.
No, I totally agree with that. I think when I've been in situations where I've had leaders who have articulated almost a feeling of personal responsibility to help somebody along, or that maybe too much was asked of them too fast. Like, there are real hiring decision failures where if you are a leader and you put the wrong person in role and you own that, you can feel that sense of responsibility. Like, I'm the one who caused this problem, so therefore I have a responsibility to see it through. And I would argue that it really is not that. You can own a mistake and stop it from causing further damage and kind of, move past it while helping a person, land gracefully or write a reference letter for them or whatever that is. But what you need to be thinking about is, what is the damage being done to your other people who are one or two layers below this person, who are maybe, even if they're not a bad person, maybe they're a good person, but they're not a good leader, or they're not a good developer of people. How many other people's careers are being put on hold because they don't have a direct leader over them that's looking out for them or helping them develop and move further on in their career? So your responsibility as a leader is not just to the person who you think you shouldn't be, who needs to be kind of brought along for the ride. Your responsibility is to all those people they touch and affect too. If you look at it from that standpoint, I think it's a lot easier to make these tougher decisions, quickly, as opposed to letting them, take longer than they should.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hack Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.